The Galactic Council chambers were filled with shouting. 50 species all talking at once, all terrified. The humans had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of Council space and won. Now their warships sat in orbit like a knife held to the throat of civilization. Councillor Drexthal slammed his 4 fists on his podium. "We must retaliate immediately. Call every fleet, every ship. Crush these humans before they get any bolder." "And if we fail again?" Councillor Vinasa asked quietly. "We just lost 180 ships to their ancient fleet. What happens if they have more?" "They don't have more," Drexthal insisted. "This is everything they have. We know this." "We knew they only had 200 patrol ships," someone else pointed out. "We were wrong about that too." Ancient Councillor Morsthein rose slowly from his seat. The chamber fell silent. When the Drasheen elder spoke, people listened. He had been alive for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. "I remember when we first met the humans," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. 200 years ago. We studied their world, Earth, a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means? Silence. It means their planet tries to kill them every day. Diseases that mutate constantly. Predators that hunt in packs. Weather that can freeze or boil. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes. And the humans survived all of it. They thrived in it. They became the top predator on a world that breeds predators. He paused, letting that sink in. We thought we could control them. We thought if we limited their military, they would be safe neighbors. But we forgot the most important thing about humans. They never stop. They never surrender. And if you hurt their children, they will burn your civilization to ash. Drexthal sat down slowly. What do you suggest we do? We give them what they want. Justice? For one child? That's what this is about? That's what every war is about, Morsthein said. Someone hurts someone else. Someone wants revenge. This is how it always starts. But Drexthal and others like him couldn't accept that. Pride wouldn't let them. They called for war. Within hours, the Council issued a galaxy-wide military order. Every allied species was required to send ships to form a massive fleet. The goal was simple: destroy the human fleet, then blockade Earth until humanity surrendered completely. The response was overwhelming. The Vrelian war fleet sent 600 ships. The Quellan Defense Armada added 400 more. The Morphidian mercenaries who fought for profit contributed 250 ships because the Council was paying well. Dozens of smaller species added their forces. 1,400 warships began gathering at a staging area near the frontier. It was the largest military fleet assembled in 500 years, enough firepower to destroy entire planets. At the fleet's head was Admiral Threxall, the same commander who had lost at Nexus Prime. He had been humiliated, and now he wanted revenge. Beside him was Council Military Coordinator Vrexon, who refused to accept that primitive humans could be a real threat. "This time we crush them," Vrexon said. "No mercy, no survivors. We will make an example of Earth that will be remembered for 10,000 years." The massive fleet began moving toward human space. Their destination was the Binary Gate, a natural choke point in hyperspace. The Council knew the human fleet would have to come through there to return to Earth. And when they did, 1,400 warships would be waiting. Intelligence Director Bo-Ra Im sat in her office on Earth reading the reports. Her network of spies and sensors had been tracking the Council's movements. The numbers were terrifying. She called President Kyung-Soo Nam immediately. "Mr. President, they're coming. Every ship they have. Our fleet is outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Nam closed his eyes. He had known this might happen, but seeing the reality was different. "Can we win? I don't know, but we have to try." Nam authorized an emergency mobilization. Every modern patrol ship that Earth had was sent to reinforce the ancient fleet. Captain Seung-Hwan Oh led 150 patrol ships toward the Binary Gate. They were smaller than the ancient fleet's vessels, but they were fast and their crews were motivated. Even civilian ships joined the effort. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, transport ships. Captain Haewon Young converted 50 cargo ships into improvised warships, loading them with mining explosives and ramming equipment. They weren't proper military vessels, but their crews volunteered anyway. At the binary gate, Admiral Ko received the news about the incoming council fleet. He gathered his senior officers in the Indomitable's conference room. Commander Tai Yang Hong was there, looking tired but determined. Chief Engineer Mi Sun Kwan sat with tablet full of repair reports. Weapons Officer Dong Hyun Shin studied tactical displays. 1,400 ships, Ko said simply. They want to bury us with numbers. The binary gate is the only way back to Earth, Tai Yang noted. We can't retreat without leaving our homeworld exposed. We have to hold here. But can we hold against that many? Someone asked. Mi-sun looked up from her tablet. The binary gate has gravitational anomalies. Strange space. It messes with sensors and navigation. We know this space better than they do, if we use that advantage. We'd still be outnumbered 2-1, Dong-hyun pointed out. Yes, Mi-sun agreed. But we're humans. Being outnumbered is kind of our thing. Ko smiled slightly at that. All right, we prepare defensive positions, mines, drones, anything that gives us an edge. We make them pay for every kilometer they advance. Over the next 3 days, the human fleet prepared for the largest battle in their history. Engineers worked frantically to repair damage from the first battle. Weapons crews tested every gun, every missile, every torpedo. Pilots practiced maneuvers until they could fly with their eyes closed. Dae-ho Park barely slept. He worked in the engineering bay, repairing systems, reinforcing bulkheads, doing anything that might give them a better chance. Other crew members saw him working 20-hour shifts and tried to tell him to rest. I'll rest when it's over, he said. On Earth, President Nam prepared a broadcast. It would go to every human colony, every ship, every person who could receive it. He stood before the camera and spoke from his heart. For 200 years we have been told to sit down and be quiet, to accept that we are lesser, to accept that our lives matter less than those of older species. They killed our child and called it procedure. They killed our people and called it policy. No more. His voice grew stronger. Today we remind the galaxy what humanity means. We are not the strongest. We are not the oldest. We are not the most advanced. But we are the ones who will never surrender. We are the ones who climb back up every time we're knocked down. We are the ones who look at impossible odds and say, "Watch me." He paused, looking directly into the camera. The Galactic Council is coming with 1,400 ships to crush us. They think numbers will win. They think superior technology will save them. But they forgot something important. They forgot that we're humans. And humans don't know how to quit. He raised his fist. For Hana. For Earth. For every human who has been stepped on by those who think they're better than us. Stand with me. Fight with me. Show them what we are. The broadcast ended. Across human space, billions of people heard the message. On ships and stations and colonies, humans stood a little straighter, worked a little harder, believed a little more. At the binary gate, Admiral Ko stood on the Indomitable's bridge and watched the sensor readings. The Council fleet was 3 hours away, 1,400 ships, hundreds of thousands of troops. The largest military force assembled in centuries. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander Hong said. Ko nodded slowly. Around him, his crew stood at their stations. Some were scared, some were excited. All of them were ready. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. 659. Ships, 30,000 humans, all waiting for his words. This is it, he said simply. They're coming to break us, to make us kneel, to remind us that we're nothing but primitives who should be grateful for their scraps. But we're going to show them something different. We're going to show them that humans don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive, and we fight back. He looked around his bridge at faces he had come to know well. For Hana, he said, for Hana. 30,000 voices answered. The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the binary gate system. 1,400 warships against humanity's 659. On paper, it wasn't even a fair fight. But humans had never cared much about what looked fair on paper. The battle was about to begin. The ancient fleet traveled through hyperspace for 6 days. Inside the ships, crews drilled constantly. They practiced firing the old weapons. They ran emergency procedures. They learned to trust systems that were older than their grandparents. On the Indomitable, Daeho Park worked in the engineering section with a team repairing coolant systems. His hands were rough from years of colony work, but they were steady. Chief Engineer Misun Kwan watched him work and nodded with approval. "You're good at this," she said. "Natural talent." "I fix things," Daeho replied simply. "Always have. Doesn't matter if it's a water pump or a starship reactor."
"Broken is broken."
"Fixed is fixed." Misun studied his face. She knew his story. Everyone on the fleet knew about Hana Park. Some of the crew couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the pain in his eyes. But Misun saw something else. She saw focus, purpose. A man who had found a reason to keep breathing. "We're going to win this," she told him. Daeho didn't answer. He just went back to work. Meanwhile, at Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was having an emergency meeting. The council chamber was a massive dome where representatives from 50 different species gathered. Today, the chamber was full of panic. "The humans have launched a fleet," Councillor Drexthal of the Vrelians shouted. He was pacing back and forth, his scales rippling with agitation. 500 ships. Where did they get 500 ships? The treaty allows them only 200. Perhaps they built them in secret, suggested Councillor Vinasa of the Quellans, her voice calm but worried. In secret? That many ships? Impossible. Then they hid them, said ancient Councillor Morsthien of the Drasheen. The old being was thousands of years old and his voice was like gravel. They hid them before the treaty and waited for the right moment. The right moment? Drexthal turned on him. You mean they planned this? They wanted an excuse to attack us? No, Morsthien said quietly. We gave them the excuse. We killed their child. The chamber fell silent. It was an accident, someone said weakly. Tell that to the fleet heading our way. Council Military Coordinator Vrexon stood at his command podium, studying fleet positions. He was confident. The Council had 300 warships stationed at Nexus Prime for defense. Modern ships with the best technology in the galaxy. Shields that could stop anything. Weapons that could burn through armor in seconds. Let them come, he said. Their ships are 300 years old. Ancient relics. My fleet will destroy them before they get within weapons range. Are you certain? Asked Vinasa. These are humans, Vrexon said with contempt. Barely civilized. Still violent and primitive. Their tactics are simple. Their weapons are outdated. We have nothing to fear. He was wrong. The ancient fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system on the 7th day. Council sensors detected them immediately and alarms began blaring across every military installation. On his command ship, Council Admiral Threxal watched the sensors with growing unease. 509 contacts, all of them large, all of them moving in perfect formation toward Nexus Prime. Launch the fleet, he ordered. All ships battle formation. We intercept them at maximum range. The Council fleet scrambled to respond. 300 warships powered up and launched from orbital stations around Nexus Prime. They formed up in standard defensive formation and accelerated toward the human fleet. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Ko watched the Council ships approach. His officers were tense, waiting for orders. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. Distance to enemy fleet? Ko asked calmly. 1,000,000 kilometers and closing, Sujinbei reported from navigation. Weapons range in 3 minutes, added Donghyun Shin from the weapons station. All ships, Ko said into the fleet channel, hold formation, wait for my command. The two fleets rushed toward each other at incredible speed. On the Council ships, officers were confident. On the human ships, crews were scared but determined. Nobody knew what would happen in the next few minutes. 800 ships, closing on each other in the darkness of space. 500,000 kilometers, Sujin called out. Weapons range, Donghyun announced. Fire, Admiral Ko said quietly. The Indomitable fired first. Its main mass accelerators launched projectiles made of tungsten, each one weighing 10 tons and moving at 3% the speed of light. There was no fancy targeting computer, no guided systems, just physics, just math, just chunks of metal moving so fast that nothing could stop them. 3 council cruisers exploded before they even knew they were under attack. The tungsten rounds punched through their shields like paper, through their hulls, through their reactors. 3 ships became clouds of debris in less than a second. The council fleet reacted with shock. Their sensors couldn't track the projectiles. They were too fast, too simple. The shields that stopped energy weapons did nothing against solid matter moving that quickly. All ships evasive maneuvers. Admiral Threxall screamed into his communications. Scatter formation! But the human fleet wasn't done. Commander Taeyang Hong led a squadron of destroyers in a flanking maneuver, coming around the council fleet's left side. His ships were smaller, faster. They fired missiles that the council's point defense systems easily shot down. Except the missiles weren't the real threat. They were distractions. While the council ships were focused on the missiles, Hong's destroyers launched their real weapon. Old-fashioned torpedoes, moving slow enough that sensors ignored them as low-priority threats. By the time the council realized their mistake, 40 torpedoes had reached their targets. 40 ships died. The battle turned into chaos. Council ships tried to maintain formation, but the human tactics were unpredictable. The ancient fleet didn't fight like a modern navy. They fought like pirates, like raiders, like desperate people with nothing to lose. Sergeant Ji-Hoon Cho was manning a weapons station on the destroyer Retribution. His job was to coordinate point defense, shooting down incoming missiles. But captain of the ship had other ideas. Cho, forget defense, the captain said. Put everything into forward guns. We're charging that carrier. Ji-Hoon didn't question the order. He redirected all power to the main weapons. The Retribution accelerated directly at a council carrier that was 3 times its size. The carrier's escorts tried to intercept, but other human ships drew them away. The Retribution fired everything it had at point-blank range, then turned hard to avoid collision. The carrier's hull split open like a cracked egg, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. On the Indomitable, the enemy flagship Dominator had engaged in direct combat. The 2 massive ships circled each other, trading fire that lit up space like lightning storms. Admiral Ko stood calm on the bridge while explosions rocked his ship. Shields at 40%, someone reported. Fire control is offline on deck 7, another voice called out. Engineering. I need more power to weapons, Ko said. In the engineering bay, Mi-sun Kwon was already moving. Shut down life support to the aft sections. Redirect everything to the main guns. But Chief, there are people back there, Bunni. They can hold their breath for 5 minutes. Do it! The power surge gave Ko what he needed. The Indomitable's main guns fired a sustained barrage that overwhelmed the Dominator's shields. The enemy flagship tried to retreat, but it was too late. 3 more hits and its reactor went critical. The explosion was so bright that it lit up Nexus Prime's night side, but the battle was far from over. The Council had numbers and technology. Human ships were dying too. A destroyer called Liberty took a direct hit from a plasma cannon and exploded with all hands. A corvette named Defiance collided with an enemy ship during an attack run. Both vessels lost. On one human carrier, a young pilot named Minji Song found herself in a damaged fighter with no weapons left. Her ship was dying, systems failing, but she could still maneuver. She saw a council carrier, launching more fighters, and made a decision. She pointed her fighter at the carrier's launch bay and pushed the throttle to maximum. For Hana, she whispered. Her fighter shot into the carrier's hangar at full speed and exploded. The blast set off a chain reaction that destroyed the entire carrier and the 40 fighters inside it. 3 hours into the battle, the Council fleet was breaking apart. Admiral Threxall had lost over half his ships. The humans were relentless, accepting casualties that would make any other species surrender, and just kept coming. Fall back, he finally ordered. All ships retreat to Nexus Prime orbital defense. The Council fleet scattered and ran. Admiral Ko watched them go and made a decision. Cease pursuit. Hold position here, sir, Commander Hong questioned. We can finish them. No, Ko said firmly. We've made our point. Now they need to see that we choose mercy. The ancient fleet held position 500,000 kilometers from Nexus Prime. Close enough to be a threat. Close enough to attack if they wanted. But they stopped. Admiral Ko opened a channel on every frequency that Nexus Prime could receive. Galactic Council. His voice echoed across their world. We could destroy your capital. We could burn your cities. We choose not to. We choose mercy. Now you choose. Give us justice for Hana Park, or the next time we come, we will not stop. You have 3 days to decide. He closed the channel and looked at his battered fleet. They had lost 23 ships. 3,000 people dead. They had beaten the council in their own home system. The morning sun rose over New Sejong Colony like any other day. The settlement stretched across the green valleys of Kepler 442b, a peaceful world where 50,000 humans had made their home. Small houses dotted the landscape, and farmers worked in the fields growing earth crops in alien soil. Daeho Park stood in his workshop, repairing a water filtration system. He was a simple man with rough hands and a kind face. His wife Jiwoo worked at the agricultural center, studying how to make tomatoes grow better in the colony's soil. Their daughter Hana was 8 years old, with bright eyes and a laugh that made everyone smile. That morning, Hana was playing in the central plaza with other children. They were chasing each other around the fountain, their voices echoing off the metal buildings. The adults watched them with tired but happy faces. Life on a colony world was hard work, but moments like these made it worth the struggle. Nobody expected the ships to arrive. The Galactic Council enforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace at noon. 15 massive warships appeared in the sky, blocking out the sun. Their hulls were dark and covered in weapons. The lead ship was twice the size of the others, painted in the red and gold colors of the Vrelian military. On the bridge of that flagship, Commander Theksul looked down at the colony with cold eyes. He was a Vrelian, tall and covered in gray scales, with 4 arms and a face that looked like it had never smiled. Next to him stood Officer Krendar, younger and nervous, holding a plasma rifle. Another human settlement, Theksul said with disgust in his voice. They breed like insects. They spread across space without permission. Today we remind them of their place. The ships descended on the colony. Their engines roared like thunder. People stopped working and looked up in fear. Ships this large only came when there was trouble. Daeho heard the sound and ran outside. His heart was already racing. He knew the council ships. He had seen them before, years ago, when they came to enforce some rule or another. They never brought good news. The council ships landed in the plaza, their landing gear crushing the flower beds that the colonists had spent months growing. Soldiers marched out, dozens of them carrying weapons and wearing armor. They formed a circle around the plaza. The children stopped playing. Parents rushed forward to grab their kids. Commander Theksul walked down the ramp slowly, enjoying the fear on the human faces. Behind him came Officer Krendar and 20 more soldiers. "Attention, human colonists," Theksul announced, his voice amplified by speakers. "This settlement has violated Galactic Council Regulation 477. You have expanded beyond your permitted boundary. You have built structures without proper authorization. You have ignored 3 warnings." Daeho pushed through the crowd. "We haven't expanded anywhere. We've been in the same location for 5 years. Check your records." Theksul looked at him like he was an insect. "Do not speak unless given permission, human. Your species has already proven too aggressive, too dangerous. You are on probation, and you will follow every rule exactly or face consequences." "We are following the rules," someone else shouted from the crowd. "Our children are scared. Put your weapons away." Another voice called out. The crowd was getting louder. More people were pushing forward. Daeho tried to calm them down, but fear makes people angry. The colonists had worked so hard to build this place. They had left Earth to start fresh. They didn't want trouble. Officer Krendar was sweating inside his armor. His grip on his plasma rifle tightened. The humans were moving closer. There were hundreds of them now, surrounding the council soldiers. He had heard stories about humans, how they were violent, how they came from a death world, how they didn't know when to surrender. That was when Hana saw her father. She had been hiding behind a building with other children. But she saw Daeho standing near the soldiers, and she wasn't scared anymore. Her daddy was there. Everything would be okay if she was with her daddy. "Papa," she called out and started running. A little girl, 8 years old, running across the plaza toward her father. Officer Krendar saw movement. He turned. His training said to identify threats. His fear said humans were threats. He saw something small and fast moving toward the soldiers. His finger was already on the trigger. The plasma bolt hit Hana in the chest. Time seemed to stop. The bright blue energy burned through her small body instantly. She was dead before she hit the ground. Her last expression was a smile because she had seen her father. For one terrible moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Deho screamed. He ran forward and dropped to his knees beside his daughter. He lifted her into his arms, but there was nothing he could do. Her eyes were open but saw nothing. Her chest had a burning hole where her heart used to be. His hands were shaking as he held her close. "No, no, no," he whispered. "Hana, baby, please, no." Jiwoo came running from the agricultural center. She saw the council ships. She saw the crowd. She saw her husband on his knees. She saw the small body in his arms. Her scream was worse than any sound Deho had ever heard. She collapsed beside them, trying to touch her daughter's face, trying to wake her up, knowing she never would. The plaza erupted in chaos. Colonists were shouting and crying. Some rushed forward toward the soldiers. Others stood frozen in shock. Parents grabbed their children and ran. Commander Thexul raised one hand. His soldiers pointed their weapons at the crowd. "Stand back!" This was regrettable but necessary. The subject showed threatening behavior. "My officer followed proper protocol." "She was a child." Someone screamed. "She was 8 years old." "Murderers!" But the council soldiers had bigger weapons. They had armor. They had ships in orbit. The colonists had nothing but rage and grief. Thexul looked down at the crying parents and the dead child without emotion. "This incident will be reported. You will all remain calm, or we will consider this settlement in rebellion. Clear the plaza immediately." He turned and walked back to his ship. His soldiers followed, their weapons still pointed at the humans. Officer Krendar was shaking, but he walked with them, pretending he had done the right thing. The council ships lifted off 10 minutes later. They left New Sejong Colony behind, just another stop on their patrol route. Another group of humans reminded of their place in the galaxy. On the ground, Deho still held his daughter's body. Jiwoo had stopped screaming and now just made small broken sounds. Around them, the colonists stood in silence. Some were crying. Some were angry. All of them were changed. By evening, the news had spread across human space. Every colony, every station, every ship, everyone heard about what happened to Hana Park. They heard how the Galactic Council killed a human child and called it protocol. They heard how Commander Thexul walked away without punishment. On Earth, in the capital city, President Kyung-Soo Nam received the report. He sat at his desk and read it 3 times. Then he closed his eyes and made a decision that would change everything. He pressed a button on his desk. "Get me Admiral Jamin Ko. Tell him to meet me in the vault. Tell him it's time to wake up the old ships." In orbit around Luna, hidden in the moon's shadow, ancient vessels had been sleeping for 300 years. Ships built when humanity was young and angry, and hadn't learned to fear the galaxy yet. Ships that the Galactic Council thought were destroyed. They were about to learn the truth. The death of one child was about to start a war that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Because the Council had forgotten something important about humans. They could be peaceful. They could be patient. They could follow rules and make compromises, but they could also be something else, and you should never make them angry. Deep beneath Earth's primary military complex, Admiral Jamin Ko walked through corridors that few people knew existed. President Kyung-Soo Nam walked beside him, flanked by 2 others. Defense Minister Young-hee Cha carried a tablet with classified files. Intelligence Director Bo-ra held a small metal case containing access codes that hadn't been used in centuries. They stopped at a vault door made of metal that could survive a nuclear blast. Bo-ra stepped forward and entered a code so old that it existed only in physical documents, never digitized, never connected to any network. The door opened with a sound like thunder. Inside was a room full of dust and old computers. Admiral Ko sat down at a terminal that looked like it belonged in a museum. He typed carefully, each keystroke deliberate. "Are we sure about this?" Young-hee asked quietly. "Once we bring them back, there's no hiding what we're doing." President Nam's face was hard. "A child is dead. The Council called it protocol. They refuse to even acknowledge wrongdoing. What else can we do? We can file formal complaints. We've been filing complaints for 200 years. Nam's voice rose. "Every time they hurt us, we complain. Every time they ignore our rights, we file papers. And what happens? Nothing. They pat us on the head and tell us to be quiet." He pulled up an image on his tablet. It was Hana Park's school photo taken 3 months ago. Bright eyes, big smile, 8 years old, look at her, Nam said softly. Then tell me we should file another complaint. Young He looked at the photo and said nothing more. Admiral Ko finished entering the codes. The old computer screen flickered to life, showing a map of Earth's moon. On the far side, hidden in craters that never saw sunlight, were dozens of markers. The ancient fleet, Ko said, built between 2520 and 2540, during the pre-contact wars when we thought we were alone in the universe. We built them to fight each other, but then we met the Council and everything changed. They made us sign treaties, Bora added, limited our military, said we were too aggressive, too violent. They said we could keep 200 patrol ships and nothing more. But we didn't destroy these, Nam said, pointing at the screen. We hid them. 509 warships, Ko confirmed. Dreadnoughts, destroyers, carriers, corvettes, all equipped with weapons that the Council banned. Mass accelerators, nuclear missiles, kinetic bombardment systems, and the flagship, the Indomitable, 5 kilometers long and armed like nothing they've ever seen. They've been in cold storage for 300 years, Young He said. Will they even work? There's only one way to find out. 2 days later, Commander Taeyang Hong stood in a hangar on the lunar far side. Around him, engineering teams were swarming over an ancient destroyer, checking systems that hadn't been powered in centuries. Taeyang was young for a commander, only 38, but he had served in the defense forces since he was 18. He had seen the Council treat humans like children, like pets, like things that needed to be controlled. Now he was staring at a warship from humanity's past, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Commander Hong. A woman in an engineering suit jogged over. Chief Engineer Mi-sun Kwan had grease on her face and excitement in her eyes. The reactor is responding. It's old tech, really old, but it's solid. Whoever built these knew what they were doing. How long until it's operational? This one? Maybe 3 days. But sir, you need to see the weapon systems. These mass accelerators are beautiful. They're simple, mechanical, no fancy computers. The Council's shields are designed to stop energy weapons and guided missiles. These just throw chunks of metal really, really fast. Taeyang smiled. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Over the next 2 weeks, the ancient fleet came back to life. Engineers worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, eating at their stations. Each ship that powered up was a small victory. Each weapon system that came online was another piece of hope. The ship's artificial intelligence systems were primitive compared to modern standards, but that was actually good. Council security systems looked for advanced AI. These old ones were too simple to be detected. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Ko stood looking at screens that showed the growing fleet. Around him, officers were learning to use 300-year-old controls. It was frustrating and slow, but they were adapting. Humans were good at adapting. Admiral, his communications officer, called out, "We're receiving volunteer requests. Thousands of them. Every Defense Force base is flooded with personnel wanting to join the fleet." Ko pulled up the list on his screen. Names scrolled past, too many to count. He recognized some of them. Officers he had served with. Enlisted personnel who had lost friends to Council actions over the years. Civilians who wanted to do something, anything, to fight back. One name caught his eye. Daeho Park, Hana's father. He was requesting assignment as a combat engineer, despite having no military training. Ko approved it immediately. Among the volunteers was Sergeant Ji-hoon Cho, a veteran of the border patrols. 5 years ago, his sister had been killed when a Council ship fired on a civilian transport, claiming it looked like a smuggler vessel. The Council called it an accident. No one was punished. Ji-hoon had joined the military the next day. He had been waiting for this moment ever since. In Earth orbit, President Nam addressed the world. It wasn't a public broadcast. It was sent only to military channels, to the colonies, to people who needed to know. "We are activating the ancient fleet," he said, his face grave on a million screens. "In 5 days, we will strike at the Council's military headquarters at Nexus Prime. We will demand justice for Hana Park. We will demand recognition that we are not animals to be put down when convenient. We will demand our rights as equals." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This may start a war. Many of you may die. I will not lie about that. The Council has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They have technology and numbers we cannot match. But they have forgotten something. They have forgotten what humans are. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are people who crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. and we do not surrender. On Luna, the last ship came online. The Indomitable's reactor roared to life, pumping power through systems that had been dormant for 3 centuries. On the bridge, Tai Yang Hong ran his hand along the command console and felt history beneath his fingers. All ships report ready. Admiral, he said to Ko. Admiral Ko stood and looked at the fleet displayed on the main screen. 509 warships, ancient but deadly, crewed by 30,000 humans who had volunteered to risk everything for justice. Send the order, Ko said. All ships prepare for launch. Plot course for Nexus Prime. Sir, the navigation officer, Sujin Bei, said carefully. That's the Council's capital system. We'll be flying right into their home territory. I know exactly where we're going, Lieutenant. That's the point. On Earth, Jiwoo Park sat in her daughter's room on New Sejong Colony. She held Hana's favorite toy, a stuffed rabbit from Earth. The news was playing on the wall screen, showing images of the ancient fleet preparing to launch. She saw her husband's name on the crew list. Taeho was up there on one of those ships learning how to be a soldier, learning how to fight, all because of what happened to their daughter. She closed her eyes and whispered to the empty room, "Make them pay, Taeho, make them all pay." In lunar shadow, hidden from Council sensors by a carefully planned solar storm, the ancient fleet launched. 509 warships accelerated away from Luna, their engines burning bright enough to be seen from Earth. They formed up in perfect formation and jumped into hyperspace, headed for the heart of the Galactic Council. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Ko opened a channel to the entire fleet. For Hana, he said simply. For Hana, 30,000 voices replied. The war had begun. The Battle of Binary Gate began at dawn, if such a thing existed in space. The Council fleet came through the hyperspace junction in waves, their ships emerging from nothing into the strange gravity fields that made the Binary Gate so dangerous. Admiral Threxall stood on his command ship, confident despite his earlier defeat. He had overwhelming numbers. He had better technology. He had learned from his mistakes. This time, the humans would not surprise him. He was wrong again. The first Council ships to enter the system hit the minefield immediately. Not fancy high-tech smart mines, just simple explosives that Donghyun Shin's weapons teams had scattered across the most likely approach routes. Old technology, so primitive that the Council's advanced sensors classified them as space debris. 80 Council ships died in the first 10 minutes, torn apart by explosions they never saw coming. Scatter formation, Threxall ordered, his confidence already shaking. All ships random evasion patterns. But the human fleet wasn't waiting passively. Commander Tae Yang Hong led the destroyer screen in a lightning attack on the Council's left flank. His ships came in fast and low, using the Binary Gate's gravitational anomalies to hide their approach. By the time Council sensors detected them, torpedoes were already in the water. 40 more Council ships died. The battle became a grinding war of attrition. The Council had numbers, but the humans had desperation. Every human ship fought like it was the last one alive. Crews that should have evacuated damaged vessels instead stayed at their posts, firing guns until the ship exploded around them. Sergeant Ji-Hoon Cho found himself in command of his gun battery when the officers above him died. A plasma burst had torn through the Retribution's bridge, killing the captain and half the command crew. Ji-Hoon didn't panic. He just kept shooting, calling out targets to the remaining crew. Cruiser at Mark 37. Fire everything. We're out of missiles. Then use the mass accelerator. Just keep shooting. On the Indomitable, Admiral Ko watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. The numbers were bad and getting worse. His fleet was taking losses it couldn't sustain. For every 3 Council ships destroyed, humans lost 1. The math was simple. Eventually they would run out of ships. Admiral, Commander Hong called from his destroyer. The Council is bringing up their supercarriers. 3 of them. Each one is launching hundreds of fighters. Ko's jaw tightened. Fighter swarms could overwhelm point defense systems. Get me Chief Engineer Kwan. In the engineering bay, Mi-sun was covered in sweat and grease. She had been rerouting power for 12 hours straight, keeping damaged systems online through sheer willpower and creative problem-solving. When Ko's call came through, she already knew what he was going to ask. Can you do it? Ko asked. The EMP plan? Mi-sun looked at the reactor readings. What she was about to do was insane, dangerous. It would damage every ship in the area, human and Council alike, but it might be their only chance. Give me 5 minutes, she said. You have 3. Mi-sun moved through the engineering bay like lightning, shouting orders. Daeho Park was right beside her, his hands moving almost faster than thought. He understood what she was doing immediately. You're going to overload the reactor, he said. Just for a moment. Create an electromagnetic pulse. It'll fry every advanced system in range, including ours. Our systems are older, more mechanical. We'll be damaged, but we'll recover faster than they will. And if it doesn't work, Mi-sun looked at him. Then we die. But Hana's death means something either way. Daeho nodded and got back to work. 3 minutes later, Mi-sun opened a channel to Admiral Ko. Ready, sir? Ko broadcast to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Ko. In 30 seconds, we're creating an electromagnetic pulse. Shut down all non-essential systems. Switch to manual controls. This is going to hurt, but it will hurt them more. Stand by, he counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now. Mi-sun pulled the final lever. The Indomitable's reactor went critical for exactly 2 seconds. Power surged through every system. Explosions rippled across the hull, and then a wave of electromagnetic energy burst out in all directions, invisible but devastating. The effect was immediate. Throughout the binary gate system, ships went dark. Advanced Council vessels lost power to shields, weapons, engines. Their sophisticated computers fried. Their navigation systems crashed. 300 Council ships became floating debris in seconds. The human ships suffered too. Systems failed. Lights went out. But the ancient fleet's crews had trained for this. They switched to manual controls. They rebooted simple mechanical backups. Within minutes, most human ships were recovering. The Council fleet was still paralyzed. All ships, Ko ordered. Attack now while they're blind. The human fleet surged forward. Sujin Bei navigated the Indomitable through the chaos using old paper star charts and manual calculations. No computers. Just math and instinct. Other ships followed her lead, guided by transponder beacons that still worked. The slaughter was terrible. Helpless Council ships were destroyed one after another. Admiral Threxel watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. He tried to issue orders, but communications were down. He tried to coordinate a defense, but his ships couldn't see each other. Fall back, he finally screamed into his emergency transmitter. All ships retreat. Retreat! The Council fleet broke. Ships that could still move turned and fled. Those that couldn't surrendered or were destroyed. The mighty force that was supposed to crush humanity scattered like leaves in a storm. But the battle wasn't over yet. Council military coordinator Vrexon refused to accept defeat. From his command carrier, he led 50 ships in a suicide charge at the Indomitable. If he could kill the human flagship, maybe the fleet would break. Sergeant Ji-hoon Cho saw them coming. His gun battery was damaged, running on backup power, but it still worked. All guns on that carrier, he shouted. The Retribution and a dozen other human ships focused fire on Vrexon's carrier. Missiles, mass accelerator rounds, everything they had. The carrier's shields held for almost a minute. Then they failed, but Vrexon wasn't done. His ship was dying, but it was still moving. He pointed it at the Indomitable and pushed engines to maximum. A 4-kilometer warship turned into a missile, headed straight for humanity's flagship. On the Indomitable's bridge, alarms were screaming. The enemy carrier was seconds from impact. There was no time to evade. Daeho Park was still in the engineering bay when Mi-sun grabbed him. We need to evacuate. The ship's about to be hit. Not yet, Daeho said calmly. He was staring at a control panel. The emergency thrusters. If I can get them online, there's no time. There's always time. His hands flew over the controls. The thrusters had been offline since the EMP. Dead systems, fried circuits. But Daeho Park had spent his whole life fixing things that didn't work. One more broken machine was just another problem to solve. The enemy carrier was 500 meters away. Daeho connected the final wire. The emergency thrusters fired. The Indomitable lurched sideways. Not far, not fast, but enough. Vrexon's carrier missed by less than 50 meters. It tumbled past the Indomitable and exploded harmlessly in empty space. On the bridge, Admiral Ko released a breath he didn't know he was holding. Someone get me the name of whoever fired those thrusters. It was Daeho Park, sir. The engineer from New Sejong. Ko made a note to decorate him later. If they survived, the battle raged for 3 more days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of exhaustion and desperation. Human crews fought until they collapsed at their stations, slept for an hour, then got back up and fought again. By the end, the Council fleet was destroyed. 890 ships gone. 600,000 dead. The greatest military disaster in Council history. The human fleet had paid a terrible price too. 380 ships destroyed. 45,000 brave souls who would never go home. But they had won. Admiral Ko stood on the Indomitable's damaged bridge and opened a channel to Nexus Prime. To the Galactic Council. To the species that had killed Hana Park and thought they could get away with it. "We could have destroyed you," he said quietly. "We could have burned your worlds. We chose mercy once. We will not offer it again. You will give us justice. You will give us recognition as equals. You will give us respect. Or we will come back and next time nothing will stop us." He closed the channel. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened in a chamber that now felt much smaller. They voted quickly, unanimously. Commander Thexul and Officer Krendar would be extradited to Earth for trial. Reparations would be paid to New Sejong Colony. All military restrictions on humanity would be lifted. Humans would have full voting rights on the Council. Justice would be served. 3 months later on Earth, Dae-ho Park stood in a courtroom and watched as the 2 Vrelians who killed his daughter were sentenced. Life imprisonment. It wasn't enough. Nothing could ever be enough. But it was something. Jiwoo sat beside him holding his hand. They had both aged 10 years in the past few months. But they had survived. They had seen justice done. Outside, the Indomitable passed overhead in orbit. The ancient fleet, now officially Earth's first fleet, patrolled human space with pride. Admiral Ko had been promoted to Supreme Commander. Commander Hong was now an admiral himself. On New Sejong Colony, a statue stood in the central plaza. A little girl reaching for the stars, Maol,